Welcome to Ali Fitness Podcast, a weekly production all about bringing health into fitness. Andrew East is an American football long snapper for the Washington Redskins of the NFL. He played college football at Vanderbilt for 5 years and has also had multiple short stints with various NFL teams. I believe he's had 8 contracts and played for 6 teams before joining the Redskins as a pro in December 2018. Not just an athlete though, he studied engineering and has an MBA and runs a very successful podcast, Redirected, and a social media business, sidehustlesocial.com. Just in case you haven't seen his Instagram, which you probably have because he's got 375 odd thousand followers. In 2016, he married Shawn Johnson, an Olympic gymnast, and together they make an amazing couple. And he also runs a successful social media marketing business called sidehustlesocial.com. So firstly, thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on and welcome to the show.
Ali, thank you for the wonderful introduction. It is good to be on.
Wow. As I was saying to you offline, what an amazing person, amazing couple, and I can't wait to delve into your story. So let's start here. I know you talk a lot on your podcast about people's backgrounds and how that sort of shapes them. So I'd love to sort of delve into your background, and perhaps you can tell us how that plays a big part in, I guess, your life and how maybe it's even shaped your career as a professional NFL player.
Yeah, well, I think we are all so much shaped by our parents and the context in which we grew up. And I was fortunate enough to have a dad, and I didn't realize this until recently. I had a dad who truly allowed me to believe that anything is possible. Like, there were very few things growing up that I would ask for or say that was one of my goals. And he never said, that's not possible, or, we don't have the resources to do that. He always made it happen for me. And that, I'm realizing, has shaped me tremendously. And I'm so incredibly grateful that he inspired that in me. And I hope that I can do the same for my kids when I have them and that time comes around. But my dad also was a college football player. And so growing up, it was always my dream to play Division I college football, which is the highest level college football you can play in the United States. And I just never even thought that the NFL was possible. But I worked really hard in high school, and my dad and my mom gave me every opportunity to make that dream come true, whether it was going to summer camps and meeting with these different teams, or taking training lessons to improve my speed, or my jumps and my verticals. So they just allowed me to. They saw that I had a goal in mind, which I think was good for them. Just to know, like, hey, this guy or Andrew has a goal, and it helps them just to know, this isn't some random thing that he's into. This is something he's worked for years. And anyway, they gave me every opportunity, and I was fortunate enough. Actually, it was a crazy story how I ended up achieving that goal of playing Division I football. I actually got a scholarship because another player on the team had gotten tragically murdered, and it's an awful story, but the coaches thought that I would be the right guy to fill the shoes. And so that's how I achieved that goal. Again, it was established because my dad played football at Purdue, and I saw that, and he would always tell me stories, and I just wanted to be a part of that. And so I did everything I could to make that happen.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story how that came about. And how did that make you feel, Andrew? Just, I guess, getting that opportunity, how did that sort of shape your career from there?
Yeah, well, so it was such an interesting situation because on the one hand is the dream come true that I'd always wanted, but on the other hand, it happened in such tragic circumstances. And so I really did my best to essentially honor that guy. His name was Rajon Bennett. And so, in my work ethic and the way that I interact with the coaches and the other players, I always tried to honor Rajon in that, because I realized, just like, so many of us are shaped by our upbringing and backgrounds and parents, I realized that I would not have had that opportunity had it not been for, Ray Jean and his sacrifice, essentially. And I know it wasn't directly towards me, but still, it's worth paying tribute to. And it was really, really fun to play college football and achieve that dream. The thing that I'm most proud of, I started in 52 college games. We went to more bowl games, like championship games, essentially, than any. Do you know about college football, Allie? You know what bowl games are?
Yeah, exactly. Well, whenever I hear football, I always think of soccer, the real football, as some people say.
Sorry for the confusion there.
No. So go into any detail.
American football. So if you're good enough in American college football, you qualify for a bowl game. And so we played in more bowl games than any other team in Vanderbilt history. The thing I'm most proud of, though, is that I was elected team captain 2 years in a row. And I just think that would be something that, Ray Jean would be proud of. And that's something my dad's very proud of. And so, of all the trophies and awards and wins that we had, I think just knowing that I was a positive influence on the team is the thing that I'm most proud of.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And something you mentioned back there about your dad that I'd love to delve into a bit more. You said that he always sort of let you think that anything's possible. Can you think of any examples of how he did that? Because as a parent, I'm sure other people can relate to me here. It's really hard sometimes because you just can't help sort of putting your limitations on your children. So can you think of an incident where you're like, I'm not sure if I can really do this, and they're like, yeah, you can do it?
Well, my dad is a big dreamer himself, and he's sometimes unrealistic at points, but I think it started in the small things. And whether it was, hey, we should build this contraption where it's half bike, half skis. Maybe the back has a bike tire on it, and then we put skis on the front. Like, he would just say, yeah, that makes sense. Let's build it. He wouldn't be like, no, I don't have time, or I'm too tired, or that doesn't make sense. It's a dumb idea. He would just kind of go with the flow, and, it'd be, I think, entertaining for him in some senses. But then I guess, the ambition, like the little things kind of translated into achievements, I guess, as far as, he put us through Boy Scouts when we were kids. And my goal was to finish my Eagle Scout rank, at a younger age than was necessary. And so I kind of scheduled everything out and planned everything out. And so, at summer camps, I'd be like, hey, we need to finish 5 merit badges in this 1 week. And everybody else would be doing like 1 or 2. And he would be like, yeah, you know what? That's possible. Here's how we can schedule the time. And he would help me, make sure that everything panned out and made sense in the schedule portion of it. And then he would just like kind of aid me along as I went through that. But again, as I was talking about the summer camps for football, he drove me around the country to get me in front of these college coaches, and he would send out email or help me construct emails to send out to the coaches. And, these things that other people would say, oh, you know what? No, that's not polite, or that's not appropriate, or that's not reasonable. He would really just allow me to chase after that dream. And there's never, even though it probably came at great cost to him, there's never any limits. And I don't know where he got that. It's amazing, and it never ceases to impress me, but it's definitely made a huge impact on my life.
So Andrew, did you always sort of think deep down that you'd just get it in to the Division I college team?
Oh my gosh, no. I mean, I think a lot of competitive people are like this, but I'm always kind of insecure and uncomfortable with even if I have a lead, I'm uncomfortable with how long that lead or that advantage might last. And so I'm always just kind of trying to work harder and harder. And I've actually been fortunate enough to not have it really achieved my goals on my timeline that was or everybody else's expected timeline. And so I think that's helped spark in me this desire and hunger to work. And so when I was offered that Division I scholarship, it was actually 2 months after pretty much everybody else had already committed to their Division I school. It was 2 months later than anybody else would have committed. And so, signing day for college athletes came and went, and I didn't have my scholarship. So I had to keep working and keep working and keep working. And just that complacency was never really an option for me because nothing panned out how it was expected to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then I'm also fascinated, and you sort of mentioned you're never really complacent. And I can totally understand that, because it seems like you've gone through a fair bit. It's not like you got in the Division 1 team, then it was all sort of easy from there. I mean, I don't, like I said, I'm not an expert with NFL, but it seems like 8 contracts and playing for 6 different teams is a lot, or is that sort of the norm?
No, it's well, maybe there would be some people that would disagree, but 8 contracts and 6 teams in a 4-year period is a lot. And typically the average career of an NFL player is 3 years if you make a team. And I've been out of college for 4 years and haven't made a team. And so, it was very difficult. And my first time getting cut, I remember just breaking down in tears and going to Sean and just saying, this isn't how it was supposed to be. But then I think back onto my college career, and it's the same thing like that. I didn't get the scholarship when I was supposed to. And when I got there in college, I actually had 4 coaches in my 5 years there. So I was always having to try to prove something, and that's not how it was supposed to be. And I didn't make my first NFL team that I signed with, and I didn't think that's how it was supposed to be. But fast forward, and I recently just played in my first regular season game. So like that's really the checkpoint or the marker that you work for. Like you have all these off seasons, and you have months and months of training and training camps that are brutal on your body, and it's really hard, and you're just working for a spot on that final roster that plays on regular seasons. And it took me 4.5 years to get there. And I look back on those times though, and I would not have been mentally ready or probably physically ready had I not gone through those 4 years. Like if I would have made my first NFL team, it probably would have been the worst thing ever. And my career would have probably been over because I wasn't prepared for it. But now I'm just more mature. I have a better perspective on things. And so I'm glad with how things turned out. I'm glad things didn't happen, quote unquote, how they were supposed to.
It's funny though, because you've just had so many bad things, rejections happen. And it's like, so I guess you got cut by the Chiefs, only being there for what, 8 months?
Yeah. I think it was less. I think it was 3 months.
Right. And then how did you actually deal with that at the time? I know your podcast is called Redirected, and I wonder, and I've heard you talk about redirected versus sort of like this redirection versus rejection. And at the time, did you feel rejected, or did you feel like, oh, this is the time to redirect?
No, I absolutely felt rejected. The first 3 months after having been cut, I was rejected. I was sitting at home on the couch, just depressed, didn't know what to do with my life, didn't feel like I had any opportunities out there for me. And, Vanderbilt's a very good, prestigious university in the United States, and I graduated with 2 degrees from there. And so even though I had that, I didn't kind of put the two together. I had failed at the goal that I had set out to achieve, or so I had thought. And so I was depressed, and I was really kind of helpless. Like Sean was just, she didn't know what to do with me. And not to get derailed here, but the reason I got cut was because I was having anxiety attacks, and like I'd never really had psychological problems like that before, but I got to the pro level from college and I just broke down. And so that kind of depression lingered for months, and I didn't know how to get out of it. And that's how it's essentially how I got into social media. Is I said, you know what, well, I had a friend who started a YouTube channel. Maybe I should start a YouTube channel, and I could track Sean and I's engagement and wedding planning and me trying out for these different NFL teams. I'm sure there's somebody out there who would want to see that. And so sure enough, I went from doing nothing and laying on the couch to just forcing myself to get involved in something. And I think that's what drew me out of that rejection and ultimately redirected me. Now, what we started off doing isn't what we did now, but it definitely got me closer to what I wanted to do, if that makes sense. And I think
Sorry, Andrea. At that time, did you sort of give up on your goal of NFL?
Yeah, I had always worked out 5 days a week, and during that 3 months, I probably worked out a total of 10 times. And there was no light at the end of the tunnel for me. I just thought that it was one rejection and I was done. But fortunately, I was able to again transition, like just kind of pick myself up, force myself to do something, and then that kind of gained momentum, and I was able to see that, hey, you know what? This isn't as bad as I thought, and not being on an NFL team doesn't mean that I have nothing else in life. And so you kind of just gain this positive momentum, I feel like, by just doing stuff, really. And that's how I was able to move past.
And we'll definitely fast forward to the future in a minute, but I'm interested. You mentioned something that I guess I'm concerned about with professional athletes, and that is the pressure. And how do you sort of see that in players? I mean, obviously you dealt with anxiety attacks. Is that common?
You know what? I think that psychological problems in general are common in professional athletics. Yes. And Allie, did you compete in professional athletics?
No, unfortunately, not quite good at anything.
I'm sure that's a lie.
I'm good at talking to people that are good at things.
That's great, and I'm really enjoying this, by the way. But what happens is, and you have this experience, is you sell out and you devote everything to achieving that one goal, right? And there's no plan B. You're just all in on that one dream. And for a lot of athletes, they don't have really any other talent or skill that they've been developing. And so whether they get cut from a team or whether just they get too old and they have to retire from professional athletics because it's taxing on your body, you hear a lot about athletes having a hard time transitioning away from sports and into their second phase of their life or their second career. And that's something that's very difficult. Actually, my brother started a charity, nonprofit organization that helps athletes move past sports. He was a Olympic cyclist and had some heartbreaks and had some tough times and just kind of like meandered through life for 3 years because all he had done was cycle. He didn't get a college degree. He didn't, network with anybody. He didn't build a business. He just cycled. And so when he was done with that, he didn't know what to do. And so he started this nonprofit organization called Hope Sports, which essentially encourages people to have a healthier relationship with sports, because I think in not only American culture, but worldwide, there is this, sports requires everything from you and you have to sacrifice everything for that championship or for that win. And there is a cost to that, obviously, like not just, it's always talking about the pain and sacrifice that you make in the weight room or practicing hard, but you're also sacrificing these other aspects of your life and development in those. And so as far as the anxiety when you're playing, I think it's an unaddressed issue largely in professional football and professional athletics because that pressure is real. And, you see these players who miss big moments or big opportunities in professional sports, like the Chicago Bears kicker just missed a game-winning field goal, and there's this fan base, these hundreds of thousands of people who really view it as your fault that they lost, and that's not necessarily the case, but there's an anxiety attached to that. So yeah, like the psychological aspect of sports does not get addressed nearly enough, if you ask me.
And what sort of havoc does that play on the health of NFL players, do you think? Gosh,
well, I think it's brutal on them. You read a lot about people who have whatever type of addiction, whether that's to gambling or to drugs or alcohol, and like it is such a natural temptation to want to move towards like, hey, I need this to distract me, or I need this to numb my mind, or I need this to entertain me, because I'm so stressed out all the time. It's unhealthy for sure.
And was there much sort of psychological support for you, I guess, from the coaches or even a psychologist?
I talked to a psychologist. I just didn't know how to do that really. I didn't know how much to share. You can't really share with the organization that you're on. I couldn't share with my team because they are evaluating me as a player. And so every information that they have on me, every piece of information that they have on me, they'll use in that evaluation. And it's not, I'm not faulting them for that. That's just how it works. But if they see, Andrew's talking to a psychologist, he's having anxiety problems, that's going to ultimately hurt my chances of making that team.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like you're sort of walking on eggshells, even though you're in the team. You're sort of like, it's almost like you're on probation all the time.
Yeah, that might be, that's a bleak way of putting it, but it's not completely untrue.
Yeah, right. And so let's fast forward. So 2016, you're totally depressed, and you go through this rejection phase, which to be honest sounds horrible, and I'm sure most people would have just given up. And you found something, I guess you realized that sport and NFL isn't everything. And luckily you had an amazing partner that helped you through that as well.
Yeah.
And you realized your other amazing talents, and, social media came on board and things changed. And then what happened in December 2018?
Yeah. So, again, football ultimately turned into a hobby of mine where I was training for it, and I would do tryouts occasionally with teams. And I went to camp every offseason for the past 4 years to try to make a team. But really it became this thing that was detracting me from what I was spending most of my time with, what I was enjoying most, and really what was my career at this point, which was this online business that we've built. And so football wasn't like a really a possibility. I just didn't think it was going to happen. I kept showing up, which I think is very important. And, some people get intimidated or discouraged and they just stop showing up, but I just kept putting my name in the hat and putting in the work when I could and where I could. But in December, I got a call. Literally, I did a podcast on this. I had joined kind of a lower level league of the NFL. It's a new startup league. And I went to a couple of days of practice there, and I said, you know what? This isn't what I want to do. This isn't my dream. The NFL was what I wanted to do. And so I'm going to quit football. Like, it just didn't look like football was going to quit. And then literally 3 days after I recorded that episode and posted it, I got a call from the Washington Redskins. And they brought me in to finish the season with them. And I got a full accredited season, played 3 games, had an incredible, just time there where we hit a game-winning field goal, and I was able to be a part of that. And we had a really fun team win. And it was just like so many amazing things just happened in 3 weeks that I thought were done. It was a dream come true. And I am still just tickled at how it all panned out.
And like I said, I don't know much about NFL, but I looked into it, and I believe a snapper, isn't meant to, or doesn't normally get the opportunity to tackle. And I believe you did have that.
Wow. Yes, Al, you did your research.
And I was very impressed because obviously that sort of separates your, ability as a player versus, I mean, I guess how else do you differentiate a good long snapper versus,
It's a great point, and I'm impressed with how you came.
I'm more impressed with you being able to do that. So, I mean, that's amazing that you had that experience. And why do you think that all happened like that? I mean, have you sort of sat down and thought, okay, so I sort of gave up on the idea of professional NFL. 3 days later, I got the call. Have you sort of looked into why all this has happened, or how it came about? Or,
well, I'm I'm a man of faith, and so it's kind of funny. I look back and I guess I attribute most of that to essentially God's plan, and I just think sometimes sometimes it's better for things not to happen on your timeline, and I would never have gotten into the social media business had it not been for me getting cut by the NFL. And so now I've realized, like, hey, you know what? My impact is actually greater outside the NFL. And I thought that wasn't going to be possible to kind of trump the impact that I could have in the NFL. And so I don't know why, but I'm thankful that it happened that way.
And I guess this is probably a hard question to answer, but it seems like this anxiety that you had was almost like holding on for life, knowing that if this didn't work out, then you have nothing. So It's almost like you're so nervous. Whereas now you're like, well, there's life outside of NFL and I love it. And now I'm a professional, but hey, look at what else I can do. So I'm just going to like it. And if I get the sack, then that albeit that's sort of the attitude that it seems like you're taking in it. And it just sort of, I don't know, do you feel less anxiety now or?
Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely spot on with that. And as far as like, I guess freeing myself from the mental prison that I had found myself in, and as an athlete, it's important to essentially let your body do what you've trained it to, and not overthink it and not try to tell it to do something different. And I think for my first couple of years, that anxiety really made me lock up and not trust my body, or it made me, try to force my body to be perfect in what my mind thought it was. And that kind of held me back performance wise. And so I do think that having established my identity outside of football, actually improved my performance in football because it relaxed that anxiety. Absolutely. It's a great point, Allie.
I mean, look, take away your football, take away the social media, just the fact that you've got a great relationship. I mean, even take that away. I mean, you're a good looking young guy. I mean, you've got everything. So and I guess the thing is you've got a great upbringing as well, which obviously makes a big difference to how things pan out.
Yeah. And, I haven't talked about my wife enough on here, but Sean is, maybe we need to get her on the podcast, Allie, but she's helped me and held my hand through all of that. And, gymnastics, the mental aspect of that is absolutely brutal. And so she was able to give me some just invaluable tips and tricks on how to kind of confront that and just trust what you're trained for. So yeah, I'm thankful for her.
I would absolutely love to have her on. I actually run a gymnastics studio here in Manhattan, and
no way,
she needs to come and show us how it's done.
That'd be fun.
So I've got to ask you, and you mentioned anxiety as being a huge health issue, but how else would you describe your experience with players' health? And I'm not just talking about fitness, because Ali Fitness Podcast is all about bringing health into fitness. Just because you're fit doesn't necessarily mean you're healthy. Yeah. How healthy are the NFL players?
I like this question because it's somewhat ambiguous, and I like that. Gosh, if I was gonna put the average NFL player and rate their healthiness on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say that the average NFL player is a 4. I just think that the lifestyle, and the financial aspect of it, I think when you're an elite level athlete and you're in the limelight, your relationship to other people is different, and your relationship to yourself is different, and you have to spend so much time. It's essentially, you have to be extremely selfish to be a elite level athlete. You're spending all your time on, training your body, and you're only concerned with really like how there's no like, in building a business or building a career, you have to depend on other people. But as an athlete, it's like you're really just depending on your performance. And so that's really all you're concerned about. And I think that hurts your health. And then also when you make that elite level, then people, there's so many infamous stories of people ending relationships of all types because there's expectations of, oh, now you can pay for this, and now I get to travel with you, and all this stuff, and so that hurts relationships. And I think all those things go into making my answer a 4 out of 10 as far as health goes.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned lifestyle and obviously gave an example of that. What about, you also mentioned finances. What do you mean by that?
Well, like there's being a professional athlete, like a lot of it's a lot of money, more than average salary in the United States. You could pretty much Google to find out what the professional athletes in every league make, and it's a lot of money. And so learning how to handle that and be responsible with that and not damage certain aspects of your life is a skill that is not trained before you actually get that money. Does that make sense? Like none of these guys are trained to handle that amount of money. And so there's so many mistakes that happen as soon as they get that, whether that's, we had a guy come and talk to our team about he lost $900,000 on one spin of the roulette wheel in gambling. And that's not healthy in multiple different aspects. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I wish I lost that because I didn't, then at least I had it to start with, but it totally makes sense. But what doesn't make sense to me is you've got a coach that coaches you on how to perform the best you can with NFL. And I'm assuming you've got S&C coaches and probably nutritionists and that sort of thing. And I'd like to know more about exactly what coaches you do have at the pro level. But do you have a financial coach?
So personally, yes, we have an advisor that helps us with investments and budgeting and just learning how to navigate all that. But is it openly provided to NFL players in general? I mean, again, it's a situation where there's people out there who are trying to leech off of these players who don't know how to navigate that world. And so, you're exposed to all these financial advisors who don't have good advice, period. Like they're just kind of leeches. And
so wouldn't it make sense then that the team has, just like the team has elected a coach, which I'm sure the coach goes through all sorts of scrutiny to get to where he does or she does. Wouldn't it make sense then to have a financial coach for the team that actually helps each individual player with their finances?
That's a great idea, Ali. I don't know why that's not the case, but maybe we should get you in front of the NFL commissioner and make some changes.
Yeah, shame I'm not a financial coach. I'd be able to to assist. And on that note, I mean, a relationship coach, someone that actually helps you with your relationships. I mean, obviously, like a psychologist, relationship, whatever you want to call it. But it seems funny to me that the team doesn't take care, and I'm not obviously just talking about one particular team, but just the professional athletes in general at that sort of level, earning that sort of money. You'd really think that obviously there's enough in the budget for it to happen.
Yeah.
So why doesn't it? And what coaches do you have?
Yeah. Gosh, I'm fortunate to have so many amazing coaches in my life. I would say whether she would like me saying this or not, my wife is a coach in some senses where she can just help me point out personal flaws because she has to deal with them every single day. We do have a marriage counselor, which has been invaluable. And there was a certain stigma attached to having, a counselor going to therapy. And it's like, I don't know why that stigma exists, but we have found it so valuable to just have a moderator to help us work through issues or work through our communication differences or whatever it is. So I would consider that a coach. We have that financial advisor. I have my speed coach. Like as far as athletics goes, I have a like kind of a skill coach. Then I have my American football specific coach. I have a nutrition coach, which actually is provided by the team. And then lastly, I have, I talked about my dad at the beginning, who helped me just dream big. And now I have a mentor who really has like changed my life because he's opened up the realm of possibility. Like really, I thought the realm of possibility was, making the NFL, and that was the boundary of that. If you envision a circle or bubble, that was the boundary of that bubble. And now this guy has really opened up the realm of possibilities. And he's talking about, he has $1 billion company and, what if you're doing this and that and how to go about all that. And I think it's so important to have somebody like that in your life to always kind of challenge you and your perception of what you think is possible. So I think that's a comprehensive list of the coaches that I have in my life.
Yeah. And is that the norm? Would you say that most other sort of players also have that amount of coaches? I'm assuming the team doesn't supply those coaches. You mentioned they supply nutritionists. What else do this team supply?
So the team supplies the football coach, like for on-field plays and how you can execute those. The team provides nutrition coaches. The team provides weight coaches, like strength and conditioning coaches. But other than that, it's kind of on your own.
So how much sort of emphasis is on like making sure you get good sleep, for example?
You know what? That's becoming more and more of an important factor. And there's teams that actually track that now with their athletes. NFL teams are incorporating technology in some really cool ways. If you look at, I think even college basketball teams, the back of their jersey, there's like this little kind of lump that you'll see, and that's tracking how fast an athlete accelerated and how fast an athlete ran, how much they ran, and all these different measurables. And so they're doing that not only during game time, but during practice, and they're measuring your sleep. And they use all these kind of technological tools to help shape their training regimen. So, if a guy walks in and walks into the weight room and the weight coach sees, I think they use Omega as the app, I believe is what it's called. And the weight coach sees that the player only slept 2 hours. The coach is going to be like, you know what, we can't strain you too hard today because you'll injure yourself. And so sleep is measured and it is gaining importance.
Excellent. So it's starting to change, which is great. And then, and how do you rate the nutrition?
Football nutrition is notoriously bad. It's kind of all about just how much do you weigh, and the composition of that weight doesn't play a huge factor. A lot of the body composition of NFL offensive linemen will be, over 25% fat, 20% fat, which is not great. But again, it's just because they need those extra pounds. I think there's definitely room for improvement.
It sounds like it. So do you feel like the team is more concentrated on sort of the longevity health of the athlete, or the win at the next game?
Oh, for sure. The win at the next game, for sure. Yeah, 100%. And that's where, it's ultimately the athlete's responsibility to, you read about Tom Brady, and I know you're in the Northeast, so I hope you're not a Patriots fan. I grew up a Colts fan and now play for the Redskins, but Tom Brady has all these trainers and masseuses to help keep his body fresh. And a lot of it is the athlete's responsibility to maintain their health. But really, NFL players are disposable. The guys make jokes about, being compared to, they're just as replaceable as the burger flipper at McDonald's. Like there's another guy who's trained and ready to do what you are there to do. And so that's all that, if you're not meeting the team's expectation or you're not healthy, they'll cut you and they'll find another guy.
So essentially then it's about taking responsibility for your own health and longevity.
Yes, absolutely.
And so it sounds like if you're only rating 4 out of 10 for the average athlete, let's say NFL player, then the majority of those guys aren't doing that.
I think physically a lot of the guys are taking care of themselves, but I think, and to your point, there's more to being healthy than just your physical, as what you're looking like on an exterior.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, because obviously it's it's close to home, but it's just really interesting to see how it's hopefully changing and where it's at the moment.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm optimistic for sure at the state of professional athletics.
So I know you're not a Patriot fan, and to be honest, nor am I, but I believe they just got into the next round. Is that right?
They made the Super Bowl, I think is what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm trying to sort of dull it down a bit, but what do you think about that?
You know what? They worked for it and they earned it, to be honest. As a fan of kind of having played for multiple teams, I kind of wish that the Chiefs had made it, who the Patriots beat, because I played for the Chiefs. But you look at a guy like Tom Brady or the head coach Bill Belichick, they work for it and they earn it. And you talk to players who are on the Patriots or have played for the Patriots, and their culture is different. Their work ethic and expectations are different. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised that they made it.
So I guess the question is, where to from here with NFL and social media?
Yeah, well, so I launched my social media course, and I'm passionate. I think that everybody has a unique experience or story or message that they can share, and I think need to share, because there's a community of people out there who are going through a similar thing or need to hear what you have to say. And so that's why I started the course. And so I'm excited for what that brings in 2019 and how people relate to that in 2019. Some of the testimonials have just like blown my mind. It's been so cool to hear the impact that it's had on some of the students. I'm excited for that. I'm still under contract with the Washington Redskins, but again, I realize now that my life is not football and there's other things to be done. And I think in that sense, I'm healthier than I've ever been, as far as not being reliant on football for my happiness. So we'll see what happens. I'm just showing up and trying to, put in the work.
I'm going to take that last comment with a grain of salt, because the last time you said that on your podcast, 3 days later, you did something different and played the best 3 games of your life. So, I'm not so sure that you've given NFL away yet, but interesting to see what happens. I'll be definitely following you, and I really appreciate all the advice and help you've given. And obviously, we'll link to your social media, your new marketing course, and everything else in the show notes. But before I let you go, I've just got 2 questions. The first one is there any sort of advice, or I know you've given us bits throughout the talk, but is there anything else that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I would say this. One, have a goal in mind. Just have a goal. And I think a lot of people get discouraged because they don't know what that goal should be or what it should look like. But I think just starting with a goal and then moving closer to achieving that goal will ultimately bring you closer to what you were made to do. And I think that's important. I think a lot of people in my generation, myself included, just don't. I don't think we were forced to do things like our parents were. So we have like this abundance of opportunity, and we don't know what to choose, or we don't know how to handle our free time. And so, I think just having a goal and working towards it has benefited me greatly. And then the second is, I would say show up. That's been why I feel like I've been able to achieve whatever it is that I've achieved is because I just didn't stop showing up. And, again, some people get discouraged or frightened that something bad might happen if they do show up, or, they might get rejected, and you probably will get rejected if you show up, but if you keep showing up, then something good's going to happen. So show up.
And you definitely live up to that last one. I mean, your sort of career reminds me a bit of like, you're a bit young to know, but there used to be no such thing as the internet. And and there were these things called encyclopedias, and people went around and knocked on doors and sold them. Wow. And they just got the door closed on them a fair bit. But I feel like you used to be one of these people. If you were, you would have been rich, because you just keep going. Door slams in your face, doesn't matter. You just keep going, and it's like you walk in the pavement. So I really feel like you're a huge example of that last thing. Just show up. And I also love that, the thing is, so many people, and you hit the nail on the head, so many people just don't know what they're here for. And they spend decades worrying about that rather than just going, this is my goal, I'm just going to work to that and then see how it develops. And sure enough, it will develop into whatever it's meant to be. So I love that. And I think another thing to me that sort of came out of what you've said today is that you basically just are so persistent, but at the same time, you're willing to let it happen in its own time. And I guess you came to realize this, but it's almost like, something you mentioned was it does happen, but maybe not on my timeline.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, there's difficulties and frustrations associated with that. And it's not like, moving forward, every time I hit a rejection, I'll be fine because I'll realize, maybe this will happen on a different timeline. But I just think that having a goal and pursuing that with all that you are really cannot, like, it can only end in positive things, whether it's a lesson learned or you achieving that goal, it's only positive outcomes.
Cool. I love it. And last question I have for you is, do you have a tattoo?
No tattoos. Do you?
Well, it's a question that I ask all the guests on the show. And in one of my episodes, I actually reveal whether I do or not. But I've got to ask you, why don't you?
I've thought about getting tattoos. Gosh, I don't know. I never cared enough about it to get one. It's never really been like a major thought of mine. I never saw a piece of art or a design that I thought I liked enough to put it on my body. And I don't know if that's a generic answer. I just haven't. I don't want to spend the money. I heard it hurts, and I just haven't put the time thinking about it. So I'm open to it. I just haven't thought about it.
I like that. That's a unique answer. So thank you. Awesome. Look, thanks again, Andrew, for coming on. Awesome. And I'll link to everything in the show notes.
Hey, thanks so much.
For all the resources and show notes from today's episode, please go to www.ali.fitness. If you liked today's episode, please show your appreciation by going to iTunes, give us a 5-star review and subscribe.